The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. We've talked before about the actual First Amendment concerns with regard to the President of the United States blocking people on Twitter. The idea that as increasingly Twitter tweets on Twitter are announcements of policy and sort of semi-formal communications from the government, this idea that the president is violating the First Amendment rights of individuals to know what he is saying when he blocks people on Twitter. The same is now being said of Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University says that it has asked Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to unblock Twitter users that she has barred on the basis of their political views. Now, that's interesting because they are not saying she can't block anyone, but she is saying if someone was blocked because of their conservative political beliefs, you should really unblock them because it's unconstitutional. And this is just a complete and total mess in a few different ways. Number one, AOC says, listen, that's fewer than 20 accounts. I have 5 million followers. 0 are my constituents of the 20 that have been blocked. And really, it's her constituents who need to know what it is that she says because they are the only ones voting for her. Then there's the question of people that she has blocked for political reasons. If someone is harassing you and making racial slurs on Twitter, and they happen to have political beliefs that are different than yours, how do you adjudicate whether they were blocked for what they were saying or whether they were blocked for being a conservative? That's just sort of like a practical complication. And then number 3 is, of course, the additional practical question of, I have thousands of people muted on Twitter. I don't block them because that attracts more attention. I just mute them and I never see their messages. Maybe that is just a better thing for politicians to adopt so that the others don't know that they are blocked.
Yeah, I think that's the way forward, right? So if you mute someone on Twitter, that means that they can still see your posts, but you won't hear from them if they try to reach out to you. Is that right? Whereas if they're blocked, they won't be able to see anything and you also can't hear from them.
Yeah, if you block someone, when they go to your profile, it says, this person has blocked you. You can't even see their tweets. If you mute someone, you see their tweets, you can reply to them. But like when I look at my replies feed, anybody I've muted, their replies just don't show up there.
Yeah, that just seems like the most simple solution. You're kind of laying out how it would be difficult to discern whether someone was blocked for political purposes or harassment purposes. Do we want a judge to go through every time that happens, every time a politician blocks someone and decide whether it's one way or another? It just seems totally impractical to me. I think that's just the best path forward. Also, this is kind of a side note, but originally Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted that she has less than 20 accounts blocked, and Fox News host Laura Ingraham responded, fewer than 20 accounts blocked, just correcting her grammar. And Alexandria, I have to say the whole name, right? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez responded by saying, see, you're a white nationalist fan favorite who makes fun of shooting victims, and I don't have you blocked. And I thought that was just like the best comment. She's really quite good with the social media stuff.
Yeah, and I'm not to take anything away from her, but I wonder how much of the strategy with staffers is around what to publish on social media. I'm not saying she's not clever on Twitter. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying she is someone who has used social media to her advantage in a way that many other people don't. And I'm curious whether it's sort of like a decided strategy area for her communications team or what have you. There would be nothing wrong with that if that's the case. It's clearly working for her.
Yeah, and she gets so much hate, too. I think conservatives can more easily identify her than even liberals can, and that's because Fox News and these other right-wing outlets talk about her so much.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing that she only has about 20 accounts blocked in that case, because you'd think that there would be much, much more harassment and threats coming her way.
Yeah.
And thus more people blocked, but only about 20.
And she may, of course, have thousands or tens of thousands muted, and just nobody's talking about it because they don't know. As I've said before, I am not big on boating. I tend to get seasick. And when I was not most recently, but on a trip to Europe not that long ago, I met with former producer Lewis in Helsinki, Finland. And we, along with our significant others, crossed over to Tallinn, Estonia on a very large ferry that was actually a former cruise ship. It was massive. I felt no movement. I didn't get seasick. I still took my Dramamine just out of, safety first, kids, but I felt fine on the trip. But for me, the idea of a cruise that is anything more than a couple of hours is my worst nightmare. And Viking Cruises has now launched its Ultimate World Cruise, which is a 245-day luxury cruise which wants to set the Guinness World Record for the longest continuous passenger cruise. It's going to hit 6 continents, 51 countries, stopping at 111 different places, and will last 8 months, ending in London. This sounds so bad to me, but it reminded me that I know a couple of people actually whose parents are retired or semi-retired, and they basically spend their time always cruising around. They will take one cruise, and as soon as that cruise docks, they will go right back out on the same boat or another one the next day or a couple of days later. And this is what they like to do. They just cruise around all the time. And I didn't realize that there was this whole subculture lifestyle that just spends its time on boats all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds kind of cool, I guess. I love traveling. I always, talk about my road trip stories whenever we take vacations. The audience knows I love traveling. But 245 straight days, that's just a little bit too much. I think I would have to go home a few times within that time period just to chill out, to unwind, to just be at home and kind of like based for a little bit. But, this is like part of a world record. This is like historic in a sense. And maybe that also appeals to people. And just the fact that you get to see so much of the world, that's pretty cool, too. Of course, there is a downside to cruises, the effect on the environment. It's really easy to commit crimes on cruises because you're oftentimes in international waters. So there are plenty of problems associated with it. But this is pretty interesting to me. I don't know if I would do it personally, but I like to see it.
The fares start at $93,000 per person, which includes business class airfare, meals, and an excursion at each of the 111 places the ship stop. In my experience, those one-day excursions that you are brought on are the most tourist trap nightmare things. I avoid those like the plague. I hate touristy stuff, and that's another reason I'm not into the cruise stuff. Everything is just set up to be touristy. You stop somewhere and then somebody with a little flag that you follow around takes you on a 3-hour tour of whatever little Caribbean town you stop in. Then you're back on the boat. It's my worst nightmare, Pat. I admit it. It's horrible.
Yeah, and I feel like, you would get sick of it, right? Like, if you're like road tripping for a long time, or if you're traveling through Europe, eventually the old cathedral that you see just becomes another church.
Yes.
And like the nice like town square just reminds you of another town square that you saw a few weeks ago. And it all sort of blends together, and you don't appreciate it as much as you would if you, say, went on a trip for a week and then like a few months later went on another trip somewhere else. And so like if you're doing this for 245 straight days and you're always being walked around through this like touristy area, it's all just going to blend together, and I don't think you're going to enjoy it that much. I think that's what would happen in most people's experience.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what would happen with me, and that's why I don't go on these incredibly long trips. I'm curious about it, but I do feel like I would want some kind of like in-between time to just be doing my normal thing and doing the show, being at home, and that type of thing. But for some people it works, and people travel for years, and I say good for them. Bernie Sanders previewed his upcoming plan to cancel all past due medical debt. He is going to unveil the plan in full next month, but so far it is just the outline, and it would cancel $81 billion in already existing past due medical debt. It would repeal parts of the 2005 bankruptcy reform bill, and it would ensure that unpaid medical bills don't impact people's credit score, which can be a big problem. Imagine that because you already have a financial problem, you can't pay your medical bills, which causes your credit score to go down, which makes it difficult for you to get a credit card or to get a car loan, which you need in order to go to work to earn money to pay off the medical bills. And so that is one of those debt cycles or vicious circles that we talk about that needs to be interrupted. And Bernie's bill would do that. And I look forward to seeing the specifics of this. As always, Pat, there will be detractors who say, hey, people getting free stuff. Not everybody gets this, and now some people do. I'm angry that someone else might get something that I never did. I paid my medical bills, similar to people saying, why did I pay off my school loans if Bernie might just go and pay them off? And of course, that's not really the issue here. The issue here is, what is the economic detriment that we experience as a result of all of these medical bankruptcies and medical debt? What would be the financial impact of paying it off? Is it the right thing to do? Is it affordable? These are the real important questions for me.
Yeah, and I was really kind of shocked by the price tag. It would be $81 billion. And given the fact that medical bankruptcies is the top form of bankruptcy in the country, and about 500,000 Americans each year declare bankruptcy because of medical emergency debt. It's surprising that it would be that small. I mean, $81 billion, sure, it sounds like a lot of money, but I think that's around the increase to the military budget that we take on each year. So if you just cut out a few things here and there in the budget, you'd be able to make room for this. And also it would be probably something that we would pay out over a longer period of time, maybe like 10 years. It wouldn't all be at once. So I think this is totally doable. Contrasted with wiping out student debt, though, maybe it's a little different because I think the student debt stuff would mostly have to do with debt that's owed to the government, right, through loans that you take out with the government, whereas with the medical debt, it would be through it would be wiping out debt that you're owing to these health insurers. So that's a little bit different. I don't know if that gets a little bit more dicey because one's public and one's private.
Well, I think the way it is different is the stimulative effect of people not having this debt would be differently calculated. And when it comes to medical debt, particularly when these things go to collections and you start to pay fees and interest on top of it, all of that is money that then would remain in the hands. The right always talks about, let's put money in the hands of people who can make the best decisions about how to spend the money, which is the people who earn the money. This would put a lot more money in the hands of people to say, I'm going to spend in my local community. I'm going to renovate the bathroom, hiring a local contractor. I'm going to go and, do whatever it is with the money. It is exactly what they claim are the right ways to be letting people spend the money that they earned. And yet, of course, they say that these are handouts and whatever else. I look forward to seeing the full plan from Bernie. Maybe it will come up at next week's third presidential debate. We will see. And by the way, I'll have news early next week about our potential live coverage of that debate, which hopefully will be news that we are covering it live. I'm working on things with YouTube right now to see if I can get whitelisted to do live commentary on that debate. If not, we may be over on Twitch, but we will see. I'll have more information about that next week.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.